Okay, can everyone see that?
Yep.
Yes. Yes.
Great. Hey, off to a good start. All right, well, what's that? Okay, we good? Somebody's saying something, but it's kind of broken.
Shows the view from inside an immigrant family's home after an ICE agent broke down the door. We're doing okay.
I don't know what that
The
is.
woman telling me must show a warrant to enter Garrison Jameson's home. Dixon Flores, the 37-year-old, is an
Does
immigrant
somebody
from
have their TV
Nigeria.
on or something?
Oh yeah, turn it on.
Okay, that's better. All right, so this is going to be the air conditioner cave PowerPoint presentation. Hello, for anybody out there who doesn't know me, my name's Paul Hetzer. I've lived in the highlands of Randolph County, West Virginia, for quite some years. I'm a native West Virginian who's been caving in one form or fashion for some time. I specialize in finding and opening new caves and leads within existing caves. My group, the Highland Diggers Project Cavers, have discovered many new caves in West Virginia. However, one of our recent discoveries, Air Conditioner Cave, has turned out to be a very unique uh, cave compared to other caves in our region. Okay. Now, this is a lighter scan of the area around AC Cave, which shows some of the other nearby caves and features. Um, Caves such as Stamos Cave, Four Point Cave, which is down here, and the Gross Grotto Quarry Cave down around this area are some of them. And most of these caves in this area are comparatively short. This right here is what I call the terminal line. Cave streams to the north of the line flow to the southwest, and those to the south of the line flow to the northeast. We don't know definitively why geologically or hydrologically that this happens or how deep into the limestone groups this continues. The caveat to this is that in Tucker County at the northern end of Shavers Mountain, the Abergask Cave Hollow system streams again flow to the northeast. AC Cave is located within the Mississippian period's Greenbrier group. Much of it is formed at the contact between the Pickaway and the Taggart formations. My mouse at there it is. Okay. There's about 120 feet of limestone above the Taggart shales, the thickest being the Union, and there's about 50 feet of limestone below the Taggart. The Taggart Formation is usually around 30-foot thick in this area. It's comprised mostly of red and sandy shale in the lower part, a white, soft, pure oolitic limestone in the middle, and a red shale in the upper part. Now, AC Cave is located east of the North Potomac syncline, which is pictured right here. The NPS is approximately along the axis of the Otter Creek Valley. The limestone dips steeply to the west-northwest through the mountain, which has an elevation, that's Shavers Mountain, which has an elevation of around 4,000 feet. And the entrance to AC Cave itself is at 2,514 foot in elevation. Now, my son Gavin, who was 8 at the time, and I discovered a shallow dead bottom sink early in the summer of 2019. As we entered the sink, we noticed a very cold air lying at its bottom, and a temperature probe into the ground measured a temperature of around 48 degrees. Even though there was no noticeable air movement in the sink's bottom, we decided due to the temperature to mark it as a potential dig site. And we began digging soon after, working on it occasionally through the 2019 and 2020 seasons. Most of the early digs involved removing the soil overburden and loose blocks of weathered limestone. And for the first couple of years, it was just the two of us digging, and we had to improvise a lot. We used appliance straps to move larger rocks and a culvert pipe to guide buckets of spoils out of the hole as it got deeper. We used a block and tackle system so Gavin could manage the loads out of the culvert. We stuck air in 2021 through very small holes and cemented breakdown. Very cold air was blasting through every crack and crevice. We were finally getting into more limestone than soil. It consisted of breakdown rocks cemented with clay. It was at about this point that we had to resort to technical digging. We finally had air to follow in a direction to dig, which is a good thing. We measured temperatures at most every digging session, and they ranged from a low of 40 in the early summer to a high of 47 in early fall, something almost unheard of in this state for cave temperatures. And the air was blowing so strong it sounded like a waterfall deep underground. In 2022, we began enlisting more help. Cavers who came to the dig site were excited about the strength and the temperature of the airflow, even though there were no voids yet to be seen. Several geologists we talked to speculated that there had to be a cold bank, which was a large volume room or rooms where the cold air was deposited and stored all winter and released throughout the warmer months. In this slide, you can see we are still digging vertically. Someone needs to mute their mic. More and more people were showing up to dig as word got out of this intriguing dig going on in Randolph County. The dig mainly consisted of hauling out bucket after bucket of spoils. As we tunneled through the breakdown, there were still no cave-looking leads, just air ripping through small holes and crevices. It was a bit of a party atmosphere at our dig site, as you can see in this slide. We always had a fire going to warm the dig teams and to cook food. It had become really a fun dig. This is also where we started following the cold air horizontally with our dig. So the mining operation continued on. I was putting more of my time and effort into promising digs elsewhere, as it seemed that AC was going to be a very long mining operation. Gavin was the one who encouraged the work, as he never lost faith that we would break through into something big, so he kept us coming back throughout the dig seasons. It was a tedious horizontal dig due to having to haul the spoils all the way out of the cave and then up through the culvert. The teams of project cavers also kept coming back to dig. They shared Gavin's enthusiasm. Getting a lot of background noise. Somebody still has their mic unmuted, I think. Okay, anyways, we had people traveling to the dig site from as far away as Ohio, North Carolina, and Pennsylvania. And we usually worked short shifts underground due to the exposure from the cold blowing air. This kept hypothermia at bay and allowed teams to warm up at the fire. By the end of the 2022 digging season, the pit was 12 foot deep. We had been tunneling horizontally since reaching the bottom of the pit for a couple of months, and our spoils piles were getting quite huge, filling a dry stream valley behind the dig site itself. This slide shows the cemented limestone we were busting through. In the early spring of 2023, despite big breakthroughs in other project caves we were working, Gavin pushed to get back to digging AC the first chance we got. By that time in 2023, we had big breakouts or breakthroughs in other caves such as Hetzer Pit, Trap House Cave, and Unexpected Pit. And those projects were consuming a lot of our time. So our work on AC was an occasional weekend, here and there. And pictured here are Mike Young, me, Gavin, Bill Good, Jason Glancy, and Garrett Baylog. But as we kept mentioning, Gavin was always pushing for AC. He considered it his cave, and this is where his enthusiasm lay over our other projects. Of course, we had a regular crew of project cavers who eagerly kept coming back to AC to pull buckets of spoils out of this cave, especially from the West Virginia University Student Grotto. We had a lot of help from them. And I would like to take this opportunity to give everyone who showed up to work AC a lot of credit for the long hours spent working this cold dig. There were a lot of late night hikes back to the parking area. Pictured is me, Nathan Accord, Gavin, Mitch Groover, Wyatt Stimmel, and Mike Young. And the culvert pipe was installed vertically in the pit to keep debris from collapsing and filling the hole, and also making getting in and out of the pit a little bit easier. In the early summer of 2023, we had progressed about 15 feet horizontally from the pit. Again, it was all mined passage, not a lick of natural cave. The more we opened the forward lead up, though, the stronger that airflow became. It was really enticing. Even my wife and dog came out for some of the digs. The mine shaft was a tight hands and knees crawlway that was following the cold, strong airflow. Looking back towards the pit, you can see the wooden ladder that leads up to the culvert pipe entrance. In early July, we finally began to see small voids and small tight leads at the face of our dig about 20 feet back by then. Air was still blasting from that direction, which was from the east. We encountered a small stream after mining into a short drop. Water was trickling down an inclined slope which climbed the dip of the limestone in what was our first section of real cave. Even though it was too tight to fit in at the moment, everyone was super excited about what we were seeing. The technical digging in this section sucked though. We were laying on the wet, muddy floor in the strongly blowing air and would become hypothermic very quickly, shivering uncontrollably, trying to work the drill. We had to shorten our shifts underground even more. And pictured here are Andrew Cox, Eli Phillips, me, Wyatt, Gavin, Nathan, Sean Phillips, and Dr. Cox. Then on the 16th of July, after 5 years of digging, we had our first major break at the top of a wet, muddy slope. We saw a larger void ahead. To get to this void, I had to lay on my back in the water, shivering and running the drill to set straws. After several sessions of busting rock, Gavin and Addie Shaner pushed through the tight, muddy squeeze. And they were gone for a bit. It was a very tight breakout along the southwest direction of the limestone strike. When they excitedly returned to the surface and told us what they had found and asked if we wanted to check it out, those of us who had been technically digging declined. We were all still very chilled from working the lead. We shared in their excitement, though, and wanted to get back as soon as possible to begin surveying. Pictured is Dennis Melko, Addie Shaner, me, Bill Good, and Gavin. A midweek after-work survey trip was set up soon after that long-awaited breakthrough. In this picture, you can see the acute west-northwest dip of the limestone as you look along the strike. The breakout was through a muddy belly crawl we called the Slime Way. This opened to a decorated hands and knees crawlway and stoopway. There were many small leads that we could see branching off from the main passage. The formation on the right, this one right here, the little bat ears, was named the Tower of Mordor by my son Gavin. He originally wanted to get a yellow marble and glue it into the top of it to complete the effect, but never got to that. Anyways, after 5 years of digging, we were finally into the cave. We began surveying every weekend when possible. Everyone wanted to find the cold bank, as it was speculated to be a very large cavern. I ended up busting open the Slimeway some more so that it was barely a hands and knees crawl, to make it more what I call Mark Mitten friendly. Hi, Mark. Pictured as me in one of the paleo stream passages. As we surveyed deeper into the cave, we began to hear a roaring sound that wasn't from the strong airflow. We emerged into what we ended up naming Gamijapa Canyon, G-A-M-I-J-A-P-A, after the first survey group to encounter it, the first letters of each of their first names, which was Gavin, Mike Young, Jason Glancy, and of course me. The interesting thing about the canyon is that it is completely in the shale of the Taggart Formation. The shale is covered with a layer of manganese that gives it this black color that you see in the slide. Again, notice the angle of the dip in this picture of the flowstone covered limestone that Mark is sitting on while he's sketching. The front of the cave turned out to be pretty mazy. There are many paleo stream passages along the strike with drains leading down dip. Most were in the Pickaway limestones. This is being a passage we named the Popcorn Crawl. AC turned out to be a contact cave, at least at this point. As I mentioned, the entire stream canyon is in shale. Shale is mechanically eroded by grains of sand and other material carried by the water flow. Passages in shale tend to get bigger the further downstream the stream passage goes, as the water picks up more abrasive material. Limestone, on the other hand, is chemically eroded by the weak carbonic acid solution from dissolved CO2 in the surface water. As the acidic water moves through and dissolves limestone, it becomes saturated with calcium carbonate and its acidity drops, and as a result is less able to dissolve the limestone it's flowing through. This usually means smaller passages or further downstream the water flows. Of course, this can change if you're bringing in new surface water higher in carbonic acid. When you see like rimstone pools and flowstone floors, you know the water is supersaturated and precipitating out the carbonates. In this slide, Mark Minton is standing above the canyon floor while he sketches during a survey. Now this picture is facing southwest along the strike. The stream alternates its course between the strike and dip throughout the cave. Due to the fragile shale walls and deep water in sections of the floor, AC is really a physically challenging cave to move through. You have to be careful with your handholds and footholds at all times so that the shale ledges don't break off and drop you down into water or a tight friction. This slide shows Ben Schaffler, my son Gavin, Yvonne Dromes, Mark Minton, and me after surveying about an hour into the cave. Now, as I mentioned, the active canyon turns down dip often, and this is one of those areas. Sometimes these passages are tight, especially where there are old parallel paleo stream passages. We had 12 cavers total on this surveying trip. We completed about 1,000 feet of survey that day. We had enough survey crews that I was able to send a group to survey the nearby Pastamos Cave, which we had dug open several years ago before this. Now, so far we haven't found any majorly decorated areas in the cave, but a lot of nice small stuff. This is Jason Glancy admiring some flowstone decorations. Now, this section of the active canyon is about 20 feet tall and up to 50 feet wide in places. It is in the main airflow, so it's a very cold section of the cave. In this picture, Gavin is standing well above the canyon floor. In many places, limestone and shale have calved off the ceiling and walls, wedging into the canyon and have to be climbed over or squeezed through. Again, this cave is physically challenging, and not just because of the temperatures. This slide shows Mike Young and Gavin sitting on a wedge slab we call Hover Rock. And I think it's about 25 feet above the bottom of the canyon. Here we are surveying one of the paleo stream passages up dip in the front section of the cave. Bill Good helped with a lot of the survey in this section. This is one of the more remarkable passages we found, a long decorated phreatic tube about the size of a half-filled subway train passage. Most of the side passages are out of the main airflow, so they are not as cold, which makes them relatively comfortable to survey in. As opposed to this passage, which was one of the coldest sections of the cave due to the concentrated airflow. We could observe the survey flagging being blown sideways by the breeze in this section. This was as far upstream as we could go the first year, and takes between 1.5 to 2 hours to get there. A large collapse is blocking the canyon at this point. The super cold air was ripping through the breakdown blocks of the collapse while water was pushing through the bottom. We discovered this collapse to be under a large 80-foot diameter by 30-foot deep surface sink more than 100 feet overhead. We believe that the water source for this cave could be located over 6 miles further upstream to the southwest, where there used to be an entrance to a cave called Alpena 2. The entrance was filled in a long time ago. So the line plot is making a beeline to that area and shows many surface dimples along the way. And there's some other reasons we believe it to be connected to Alpena 2, but don't have time to get into that. This slide shows the active downstream canyon, which of course is still in the shale. At the far northeastern downstream section of the canyon, though, we reached a partial sump. The sump is approximately located at that terminus line that I had mentioned earlier. We don't know exactly what it means, this deep below the surface, or how it affects the canyon's water flow. It's just that it's a muddy sump. The canyon fills up with organics and sand and debris, and then becomes very tight to get through. Gavin is pictured here well above the bottom of a tight slot in the canyon. Now, as far as we know, this is the longest subterranean non-submerged stream canyon completely within a shale layer that has ever been discovered in West Virginia. In October, less than 3 months after our breakthrough, we were getting close to our first mile of survey. We designated all of our surveys going forward the BG surveys in honor of my friend and fellow caver, Bill Good, who had unexpectedly passed away that month. We had a lot of problems surpassing that first mile. Everything from instrument failures, bad weather, to just screw-ups on our end. One problem, though, wasn't the number of leads. We had a plethora of those. Pictured here is Mitch Groover during a BG survey trip. And finally, 1 week after Bill passed and after several days of surveying, we exceeded the mile mark. I knew it would be the first of many. After breaking that first mile benchmark, we completed several trips to technical dig in the upstream breakdown. Nikki Fox located several rooms and passages above the collapse. However, none seemed to get us back towards the upstream canyon. Now, as I mentioned, the downstream canyon at the sump, at least as indicated by the airflow, probably continues. It'd be a miserable dig, but probably worth it. Most likely the stream continues through through Shavers Mountain and comes out in one of the Otter Creek caves, and that's just a supposition. Now, we don't schedule AC trips in the winter season as it's just too dangerously cold. Now, and I also forgot to mention that when the outside temperatures drop below the mid-30s, the new cave entrance we created begins to suck that cold air in. So the 2024 AC cave season kicked off at mid-April with several trips to dig at the upstream collapse. It wasn't until July that, after all the dig attempts had failed to get us through, that Gavin discovered a tight climb down out of what we call Nikki's attic, where she found the rooms and the pits above the breakdown. And this got us past the collapse and back into Gamijapa Canyon. We began surveying in earnest again, first to a section that we named Gavin's Bypass that led us hundreds of feet back into the stream canyon. This section was tight and muddy in sections, but easily passable. Then I discovered a side lead that was easier and less muddy than the bypass. And we surveyed down this section, which contained the actual cave stream, and named it Paul's Expressway. The new upstream section of the cave was proving to be larger than the front section. Pictured here is Nikki Fox taking an L-rod shot as we surveyed up Gamijapa Canyon. The upstream section of the cave didn't disappoint us either. Not only did we find upper passages into the Union Limestone, which is our big cave maker, we discovered multiple levels of cave with many promising leads yet to be opened. We also completed a dig started by Hunter Campbell, which bypassed the slimiest section of Nikki's attic. It was a long, tight belly crawl that we named Hunter's Tunnel. Pictures of one of the large breakdown rooms. The discovery of the Yup borehole by me, Gavin, and Gracie Cornish at the end of one of our third-level surveys was a very exciting moment. We had to wait until our next survey trip to begin exploring its length. The following weekend, Gavin, Zev Yirmiyahu, and I began surveying the borehole, which led us to the discovery of the largest room in the cave so far, what Gavin named the Rubber Chicken Room, and I'll tell you why later. On another survey trip, we reached a second terminal collapse upstream in Gamijapa Canyon. Like the first collapse that we broke out from, this one had great air blowing from it. It also had many potential leads to dig to try and get through to what we are sure will be ongoing passage. It was taking about 3 hours to reach the Rubber Chicken Room and another hour to reach the far upstream dig sites. It was time limiting and exhausting to complete day trips to this new section of cave, so we decided it was time to find a suitable site for a base camp. We discovered a short upper fourth level passage that we thought would be a perfect place to establish the camp, as it was out of the cold blowing air, relatively close to the stream 3 levels below, and had convenient shelves along the passage length for sleeping. So the rest of the 2024 season, we ferried in camp supplies to cache at the base camp that we named Overlook Camp, since one end overlooked a large lower passage. At the beginning of the 2025 season, we continued with camp cache trips, even bringing in a camp toilet that we set up over a dry pit in the third level passage. The early 2025 season discoveries were game changers for exploring the cave. First was Gavin's discovery of a chimneying passage up through breakdown, which allowed us to bypass a section of Gamijapa Canyon that was a low, deep-water belly crawl. During the crawl survey, Nikki Fox described it in her sketch as deep as fuck. It became known as the DAF passage, DAF passage. You couldn't avoid getting wet through the crawl, and this made working the upstream terminal collapse problematic, as the cold blowing air would cause hypothermia if you didn't have a dry set of clothes to change into. Gavin's second discovery was another chimneying bypass that spiraled up through the breakdown above Nikki's attic and led directly into the rubber chicken room 30 feet overhead. This cut out about 45 minutes of travel time to the overlook camp. This picture is showing a section of the Yup borehole passage. We were all pretty apprehensive about the first scheduled AC camp trip, especially since it had been a very wet spring, which translated, of course, to wetter conditions underground. We knew we would get wet on the trip in, which meant it would be uncomfortably cold at camp. There were 4 of us for the first camp trip: Gavin, me, Allie Crosby, and Kevin Hilling. Our cave suits did get slimed and wet on the way in, but with dry clothes to change into and being out of the colder blowing sections, it was actually quite comfortable. Now, there were some problems at the overlook camp that raised their ugly heads that first night. The first problem were water drips along the shelves that weren't there in the drier season. And the second were unnoticed lumps and slopes where we set up our sleeping pads and bags that made the site kind of uncomfortable to sleep on. We decided to move the camp the next morning to a secondary site in the borehole passage where a large slab of ceiling had fallen, leaving a wide, flat, dry surface to camp on. It was further from the water source and the bathroom setup and slightly colder at 47 degrees. However, it promised to be more comfortable than the overlook camp. So we spent a good portion of the next day moving all the cache supplies, including those for other cavers, to the new borehole base camp, which was about a half hour from overlook camp. The first picture shows Kevin, Allie, and Gavin watching a movie on Gavin's phone at overlook camp, and the second picture is at borehole base camp. The 4 pioneers pictured here of the first AC camp trip proved the viability of camping in this very cold cave. This would allow for pushing deeper into the cave. 2 weeks later, we were back for another camp trip, and this time with 6 campers. They were me, Gavin, Rick Royer, Andy Schofield, Zev Yirmiyahu, and Adam Happensack. Since the new bypass from Nikki's attic to the rubber chicken room brought us out closer to the borehole base camp, it took less than 2.5 hours to reach camp. Rick Royer decided to stay at the overlook camp, though, since it was closer to the toilet facilities, and the rest of us set up at the borehole base camp. Saturday, we split into 2 teams. The first team was going to pick up surveys and leads around the borehole, while me and Adam made the hour trip to the upstream collapse to dig. This picture shows on the left the survey team in one of the large AC passages, and on the right a view from the borehole base camp as a waterfall developed from a ceiling drain after a heavy surface rain that evening. This slide shows the 6 of us after exiting the cave that Sunday. It's Rick, Zev, me, Gavin, Andy, and Adam. We also completed some day trips in the AC cave. I was able to conduct a bolt climb to the top of the 35-foot dome in the rubber chicken room, where a 6-foot diameter borehole passage that branched off in 2 directions unfortunately ended in mud plugs. The picture on the left is me on that bolt climb, and on the right is the 2-foot-long blue rubber chicken that Gavin packed in to use as a register in the rubber chicken room, so people come in and can sign it. Unfortunately, the butt's already been signed by Troy Weiland. Oh, why is it? We also now have running water at the borehole base camp, along with finding a suitable spot for the toilet that's much closer to the camp itself. Disregard that's actually mud on the toilet seat, not poop. Our final camp trip took place in late October of 2025, with Mitch Gruber and Troy Weiland joining Gavin and me for the trip. We again split into two teams to dig and survey. Unfortunately, we never made a breakout at our upstream dig. And of course, the requisite post-camp trip photo with us all slimed up. The weekend following the camp trip, Gavin talked me into going back to the upstream collapse to work a lead he discovered that he's really very excited about. Kevin Hilling joined us for this long day trip deep into the cave. After several hours of digging, we made a breakout, although we barely avoided a disaster when a large slab of rock fell in a crawlway, trapping me. With the help from Kevin, I was able to turn and squeeze out from under the rock, thankfully. I was too sore to explore further or even, do the surveying like I'd wanted, but Gavin and Kevin pushed onward, or should I say upward, where they discovered what may be the biggest room in the cave so far. Gavin named it the Elysium, which means a mythical place of paradise or heaven. I haven't got to see it yet. I can't wait to the 2026 season to get up in there because it's supposed to be pretty fantastic. So the following week, after that day trip, rain and cold weather moved in, and we called an end to the 2025 season for the Air Conditioner Cave. And this is a cave compass line plot from early in 2025. It's missing a lot of the survey lines from 2025, but kind of gives you an idea of what the cave looks like. Just the line plot. The stream itself stays mostly on the down dip side of the cave, following along the strike and dip, and goes all the way to the downstream sump here. We believe that there are many more miles of cave left to push, and we expect to make more major discoveries in this upcoming season. And say we're always welcoming of help in the cave. Anybody who thinks they're up for the challenge, please do join us. And there's one other thing I want to show. That's the entrance closed up for the season, but let me see if I can. Okay, and show and bring up another slide here. Now, I've been doing the cartography for the cave, kind of a work in progress as we survey more of the cave passage. The very big file, so I couldn't include it in the actual presentation. This is the entrance, the slimeway crawl, and then up into the stoopway, the decorations, the subway tunnel. Clear down here was the downstream sump, and this used to be the biggest room in the cave, Wyatt's room, named after Wyatt Stimmel, who discovered it. And the main passages, you can see how mazy this front room is. This is Gabby's room. She's the one who found and surveyed this. Gami Japa Canyon continues up here. This is the big break room, one of the last rooms before we get to the original terminal collapse. And then this is where everything changed after the terminal collapse. The green denotes a third level passage, blue is second level passage, and red would be a third level passage. And of course, black is the main level, and they're pretty much stacked on top of each other, except for parts of that third level or off to the side of the Gami Japa Canyon. And all the way up here is that's as far as we surveyed. There's leads that go off on a lower level, and then they climb up into, I think Gavin said it's about 30 feet climb up to the Elysium, and that Elysium room 70 feet tall. So there's a lot more to go here yet. And we think that, past this collapse area, we're going to get just back into big ongoing Gami Japa Canyon again. Anyway, that's all I have. Is there any questions from anybody?
Is the current collapse above a known sinkhole or collapse area on the surface?
No, it's not. No, it's about 130 feet below the surface, but there's no depressions or anything on the surface above it.
How was the rubber chicken named? You never covered that.
Oh, the rubber chicken room. Okay, it's a big, massive breakdown room. 100 feet long, 60, 70 feet wide. It has two domes, a 45-foot and a 35-foot dome in it. Several pits, including the one that Gavin made the breakout down through to get to Nikki's attic to shorten our trips in. Huge blocks of breakdown. I mean, giant house-sized blocks, laying all over the place. Really, really cool room. Pretty spectacular looking.
Hey, Paul, nice map, man. Very nice cartography.
Oh,
From
thank
what
you.
we can see on here.
Yeah.
I have a
Yeah,
question
yeah,
about the airflow. Do you have the airflow up there in that new Elysium room, or is the airflow down in the breakdown?
I have not been up in the Elysium because no, I'd been injured from that collapse when I was working the passage to get up. But Gavin and Kevin say there's airflow, but they don't know where it's coming from. They can feel it, but they just don't know where in the room it's coming from yet. So I need to get up there with my powder and try to figure that out.
Okay.
Exciting.
But the main part of the airflow is down at the stream level.